And then it began. The first attack wasn't like the movies showed us. There weren't spectacular explosions in the sky or colorful energy beams cutting through the atmosphere. It was silent, deadly, and completely devastating. The alien ships, floating over our biggest cities like metallic storm clouds, simply activated something. A pulse, an invisible wave that swept through London, Tokyo, New York, and São Paulo in a matter of seconds. The electrical systems died. They didn't fail, they didn't flicker. They simply ceased to exist, as if someone had erased the very concept of electricity from the universe. But here's the thing about us Americans. Hell, about all humans, we don't quit. While other intelligent species across the cosmos apparently surrendered when faced with superior technology, we did something different. We improvised. General Victoria Blackwood was at the Pentagon when the lights went out. No radio communication, no satellites, no internet. Just darkness and the distant sound of millions of people trying to figure out what the heck had just happened. She grabbed a battery-powered bullhorn, a relic from decades past, and began coordinating the most unlikely military response in human history. The first real battle happened over the skies of Mumbai. Indian Air Force pilots discovered something fascinating. Their oldest fighter jets, those built with simple analog systems, still worked. The F-16s and fifth-generation fighters were useless, but the old MiG-21s, with their basic electronics and mechanical systems, could fly. Commander Arjun Sharma climbed into the sky in a fighter that was older than he was. His mission was impossible. Attack an alien ship with technology our grandfathers would have recognized. But he flew anyway because that's what we do. We try, even when we know it's gonna hurt. The alien ship over Mumbai was the size of a football stadium, black as the space between stars, with surfaces that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Sharma approached it with his ancient air-to-air missile and fired. The missile exploded against the ship's hull without causing so much as a scratch. But then something extraordinary happened. The ship reacted. It moved slightly, as if it had been surprised. And in that movement, Sharma saw something that would change everything. A small section of the ship glowed for a split second, as if internal systems had been activated in response to the attack. Sharma didn't know it, but he had just discovered the invaders' first weakness. They had to lower their shields to attack. The news spread the old-fashioned way. People running through the streets shouting information to others, soldiers using flares and Morse code. Humanity had gone back to its communication roots, and it was working. The next confrontation happened in Detroit. The city that built the cars that changed the world would now become the birthplace of a military revolution. Ford factory workers discovered they could modify old diesel generators to power basic weapon systems. Welders, mechanics, and engineers worked side by side, creating something even they couldn't believe was working. They built cannons, huge, old-fashioned cannons that fired solid steel projectiles. No electronics, no computers, just basic physics and human determination to punch back at whoever was trying to intimidate us. Sergeant Marcus Thompson, an Afghanistan veteran who had lost his left leg in combat, was operating one of these cannons when the second wave of attacks began. The ship over Detroit descended lower, preparing to devastate the city like it had done to others. Thompson waited, his sweaty fingers on the improvised trigger, mentally calculating the trajectory like his grandfather had taught him during hunting trips when he was a kid. The alien ship began to glow, preparing its devastating attack. The shields lowered. The steel projectile weighed 400 pounds and traveled fast enough to punch through a concrete wall. It hit the ship right in the center of the section that had glowed. This time, the result was different. The explosion lit up all of Detroit. Not the explosion from the projectile, but the explosion of the ship. Overheated alien systems releasing energy in cascade, a chain reaction that turned the invader ship into a second sun for a few terrible and beautiful seconds. When the light faded, pieces of alien metal were falling like rain over the city. Humanity had brought down its first ship, but the aliens weren't stupid. They learned. The next wave of attacks was different, more cautious, more brutal. Over Berlin, they didn't descend. They stayed in the upper atmosphere and began bombarding the city with kinetic projectiles. metal rods falling from space like artificial meteors, each with enough force to create craters the size of city blocks. That's when humanity showed another of its unique characteristics. We don't just adapt, we learn to use our enemies' weapons against them. Dr. Heinrich Müller, a physicist from the University of Berlin, was in underground bunkers when he had a crazy idea. If the aliens used kinetic projectiles, why couldn't we do the same? We didn't have working spaceships, but we had other things. Rockets, old rockets designed to carry satellites into space. The European Space Agency had several in stock, solid fuel that didn't depend on complex electronics to function. Müller convinced the military to try something that sounded like suicide. Modify the rockets to carry solid projectiles instead of satellites. Improvised missiles that could reach the ships in the upper atmosphere. The first test was over the skies of Munich. The rocket rose like a line of fire against the grey sky, carrying a payload of solid steel. It hit the alien ship at orbital velocity. The result was spectacular. The ship didn't explode like the one in Detroit. It simply split in half. Two giant sections falling from the atmosphere, like buildings collapsing in the sky, leaving trails of fire and molten metal. The aliens began retreating to even higher altitudes, but humanity kept climbing after them. In Russia, engineers discovered that the old intercontinental ballistic missiles still worked. Weapons designed to cross continents and cause nuclear destruction, now repurposed as spaceship hunters. Colonel Alexei Petrov was at a Siberian military base when he gave the order for the first ICBM shot against an extraterrestrial target. The missile rose through the atmosphere like a demon of metal and fire, chasing a ship trying to escape to space. The explosion happened at 37 miles altitude, a nuclear fireball that illuminated half the continent. When the light faded, the alien ship had simply ceased to exist. But it was in Japan that humanity showed its true genius for warfare. Japanese engineers realized something the rest of the world had missed. The aliens didn't just attack with superior technology, they attacked with superior logic. Their movements were calculated, efficient, predictable, and predictability is a weakness when you're fighting against humans.